Teachers, have you ever found students trying to hide that they're smart?
Long ago, when I was a young physics teacher, we posted exam results on the bulletin board, in order of score, highest score first. One young lady came to me and said, "Mr. Odom, please deduct 10% from my score as posted on the board. My high scores are killing my social life." I did, and she thanked me. I kept the correct score in my records. The diminished score was only for the bulletin board. Her report card and transcript showed that she had earned. Her social life improved, and she became very popular. I always felt it was a shame that bright women were looked down on in those times. About 1960. This happens a lot at the middle school level. Usually sometime around the middle of their 7th grade year, a lot of the smartest, most outspoken students who participate the most in class discussions and are generally a pleasure to teach, suddenly go silent. They begin to act uninterested. Their test scores remain high, but it's like their open enthusiasm for learning just leaves them. Peer pressure is usually the culprit. Kids at that age want nothing more than to fit in with their classmates. That's also when a lot of body image issues begin to take hold. Students who'd been overweight for years without a care in the world suddenly get really self-conscious about it. Very few 13-year-old students are comfortable sticking out in the classroom. For smart students who love school and love participating in lessons, part of no longer sticking out is shutting up and acting like you don't care about school, because so many of your classmates, particularly the cool kids, are acting that way. Most of them grow out of it eventually. By about age 16 or so, they get more comfortable with who they really are, and quit caring so much about what their classmates think about them. This year, in our multiply handicapped class, we have one student, a young man in a wheelchair named A. Last year, when he first arrived, we took him at face value and according to what his IEP said, individualized educational program. Many of our students have little to no reaction when adults interact. Many don't answer to their name, turn when called or recognize themselves in a mirror or photograph. They have serious or multiple health issues. A suffered from serious brain injury when he was young. We were told an attendant threw him to the floor. We were told A can't communicate either verbally or point to pictures, and was very limited in what he did understand. We found out very quickly how wrong that was. A is smart, smarter than anyone in our class. He likes science and did correctly answer yes/no questions. The other students grabbed the dirt or leaves on a plant, A carefully looked at it up and down. The other class aides and I agreed his mother either was not aware of his abilities or didn't care to find out. He had tantrums when he was bored, didn't like certain activities, etc. Finally I told him, "A, you're a smart guy, even if you pretend you aren't. If you want to stay at this level, that's fine, it's your choice. But if you want to be with kids who are at your level, you have to show us you are smart. And the first way is to communicate with us. Don't throw a tantrum, point to what you want. If you want to get out of the class for a walk, point at the door. If you keep having tantrums, we will have to ignore them." I kept having tantrums and we walked away from him. Finally, he started to point to the door. We allowed him to unlock his wheelchair and show us which direction he wants. He can pull himself along the wall guard rail, he has one good arm, so he can get down the hall. We have been encouraging him to get himself to the nurse, the gym, etc. With one of us walking alongside. I has been amazed that he can get himself around if he chose to do that. He is not bored as often, and because he burns up a lot of energy, he doesn't grab other students' hair or clothes as he used to. We figure we are moving on the right direction. Even if he refuses to answer simple questions, he read the word push on the water fountain and pull on the fire alarm. He set one off last year. I'm pretty sure he knows much more than he lets on. One favorite place he loves to go is the school cafeteria where he watches other kids. At first, he acted like it wasn't important. But I saw he would stop at the door and look in more and more. I took a gamble and told him, if you want to hang out with the other kids, you will need to prove you can do it. And that means answering the testing questions correctly. He made a face at me. I shrugged and said, you have the choice. Just like you can choose to move right or left, you can choose to answer questions. You aren't a baby, you need to think it over. I don't know what will happen over time, but I'm hoping it does make a good choice for himself. By the way, A's mother told us not to force him to learn if he doesn't want to, not letters, numbers, or even manners. You see, that's the crazy part. I wanted my children to be the best they can be. Well, we have 5 years with A. Let's hope for the best. Edit for an update. A has been working on getting around the building. The therapists all thought it was better to give him the opportunity to get around the halls than get him to a therapy room where he will spit, throw things, and other usual behaviors. This past Monday, I decided to give him freedom to decide where he will go and what to do. I didn't offer assistance unless he really needed it. I saw he was trying to figure out the best ways to make U-turns and avoid banging his wheelchair into objects. He was puzzled as to why I didn't slow him down or turn him around. Let's see if you can do it. Try it yourself, and if you can't, I'll help. It was great to watch him experiment with different turns. And it strengthened my thinking that he knew more than he let on. He didn't stop and tantrum because he couldn't do it. If one turn didn't work, he tried another. Plus, this work has another benefit. He actually burns out that extra energy, so he's less likely to act up or look for trouble. It's way too early to be sure. I'll keep you posted. I taught in low-income schools close to the Mexican-US border. The first thing I noticed was that I was getting a lot of homework that was folded multiple times. After one class where I got 3 or 4 of these papers, I sat down and looked at the folds. They all looked the same and most of them were boys, but there was one with a girl's name. With the papers unfolded, you could see 8 evenly spaced rectangles formed by the folds, so they had been folded 3 times. These were kids who did not carry anything to class with them. No peachy folders, binders, and certainly no briefcases. They were doing their homework, which was a surprise, I guess, but didn't want anyone to know, so they folded them and stuck them in the back pocket of their jeans. I let it go. The work was usually at grade level or above. Another time, I saw a boy writing what looked like an assignment when a friend came into the class just before the bell rang. He wanted something, but my student wanted to finish what he was writing, so the other kid pulled his paper away and pushed it onto the floor. He ran away laughing but stopped at the doorway to yell back at his friend, later, "Schoolboy." I'd never heard that expression before, but it was obvious that it was an insult. You weren't supposed to show that you cared about school. Then there was Immaculata, not her real name, a quiet and studious Filipina girl, whose work in her assignments had really impressed me. She usually left as the last kid in class when they were working on a class assignments, and her answers were always the longest and most thoughtful of any in the class. One day as she left, I told her I enjoyed reading her assignments, and said that she was a gifted and talented student. No one else heard me say that, but her work in class dropped significantly in both quantity and quality after that day. If I had graded the daily work I didn't, she would have had all A's, but now her work was barely passable, C's and D's. I'm not sure exactly why she did that, and she wouldn't talk to me anymore in class or after. My guess is that being told she was smart meant that she now had to continue to meet that higher standard. Whatever the reason, she didn't want any kind of spotlight on her and did not want to be labeled smart or gifted. Sad, huh? I have had multiple experiences in which students tried to hide their intelligence. I had one student who put his head down in class every day. He would bomb his tests. He never did any homework. One day, he slipped. Someone answered a question incorrectly, and he sat up and corrected them. He said, "Come on. It's not that hard." Immediately, students started accusing him of being smart. He put his head back down. I took him aside after class and told him I knew how capable he was. He denied it, but I told him I would make him a deal. He could keep pretending he wasn't smart, and I wouldn't out him, but he needed to try on the tests. He could pretend he failed them, if he wanted. That's exactly what he did. He started getting A's and B's on tests, but he would announce that he had gotten a D or an F. Go figure. There was one child who was getting straight A's until his friends found out. Evidently, they started teasing him about being smart and he started failing his classes. I had a student once who pretended to know nothing in class, but I knew he was really bright. He told me that if the other kids found out, some of them would make him do their homework for them. He didn't want me saying anything, because he didn't want them angry. I started having the students do the readings at night and answer the questions at the beginning of class. This actually increased the number of students who did the homework, but it also meant that they couldn't cheat off of each other in the morning. His grades came up significantly. I had another student who threatened to fail all of his tests if I asked more of him than I asked of weaker students. Our school makes a big deal about pushing children academically, differentiating instruction based on student abilities. The child didn't want to do challenging work, and he told me that if he had, he would have signed up for an honors class. He wanted an easy class, and since he was going to community college to save money, he knew that an honors level U.S. history class wouldn't really help his academic future. When I was told he needed to be challenged more, he started sleeping in class every day. He told me that if I continued to give him honors level work he would fail on purpose, just to show them that he wasn't really smart. He actually got a perfect score on the state end of course test, which is really tough for that subject. I taught extra maths to high school kids as a student job. There were a few memorable kids, like the one who I once talked out of a suicide attempt, not his last, sadly, but his sister tells me he's still alive and receiving treatment for his mental illness. But one kid was memorable for all the right reasons. I remember when I first came for the job, his mom asked a question about my methods, and I offered to let her sit in on a lesson to put her at ease. "That's not a good idea," said the dad, with a tone somewhere between humorous and grim. It turned out that the mom was forcing the kid to sit in his room for hours after school, in a misguided effort to get him to work extra hard on his homework. Doing a half-hearted job was his only form of rebellion. He liked encouragement though. Whenever he finished a sum we'd mark it together, and I'd point out the parts he'd got right and then we'd work on whatever concept had tripped him up. The point was not perfection, but improvement. He started to blossom. Within a few months he was getting A's. I didn't do that, no teacher can get A's on the pupil's behalf. When he discovered the point of hard work, he was more than willing to put in the work. We didn't stay in touch. I was fond of the kid but it didn't seem appropriate for a 20-something female to get too close to a teen boy. But I just looked him up on Facebook and he made it. He's a practicing architect now. I taught English in South Korea a few years back and there were often competitions. Once, there was an English competition in the school. I remember the words Golden Bell, and the contestants basically were given a packet of shortened stories in English to read. They would be tested based on those stories and I was the one who had to make up 100 questions. In order to become a contestant, you had to pass other assignments/tests and competitions. There was a girl who was pretty good at English. She hadn't left the country before, which often meant that individuals' English was good and often better than their peers, but she was a favorite to win. She had already represented the school at a citywide level at a competition consisting of performing a speech in English from memory. I remember watching her practice. It was a lot of repeating for her and accompanying arm movements. Her homeroom English teacher was her coach and it was a lot of practicing until it was perfect, so perfect that the speech was more of a performance and not natural at all. I didn't get a say in them, sadly. I was only called in once to listen and make sure that the English made sense and flowed. Back to the story, the school-wide competition was held in an auditorium of sorts and the questions were in a PowerPoint presentation. Every contestant was given a small dry erase board to write down their answers and to display it once given the signal to do so. If you got 5 answers wrong, you were disqualified and left the room. If you won, you got to be in the running for a larger competition from the impression I got. I watched that girl because she was giving me a funny vibe that occasion. She got her first and second answers right. Then, she started getting them wrong. On purpose. With her first wrong answer, I watched as she literally did a mini fist pump as if to congratulate herself. I saw her lips curl up in a smile when she continued getting them wrong. It was subtle, but it was obvious, at least to me. Knowing her personality when she made it to the city-wide competition, it was completely unlike her to calmly exit the room when she hit 5 wrong answers. She wanted to lose. And she did. The other remaining contestants were crazy. They all went through my answers like they were nothing. I ended up needing to make up more questions on the spot until roughly 20 questions later, only one remained. They didn't just read the stories, they memorized the entire packet word for word. The educational system in Korea and likely throughout the rest of Asia is fiercely competitive. There's a lot of stress and pressure everywhere. The teachers have pressure who push it onto the student who try their best. Students know each other's grades, and I taught in an elementary school. Sometimes their best isn't good enough and they stop caring or even want to try. Others stop even before they try. I was somewhat worried about her afterwards, but she still did well in class and we would still talk a little between classes. She just no longer wanted to stand out, because all that meant was getting into another meaningless competition that was for reasons that were pointless to herself and her well-being. I honestly couldn't blame her, it might have even been the smart choice. She was in 6th grade then. She should be graduating high school by now. I'm sure she's doing well. When I was teaching English at Thailand's version of the West Point Military Academy, one cadet had near native speaker ability but only in one-to-one conversations with me and other teachers. He was the son of a Thai diplomat and had lived abroad for most of his life. In class, he acted as if he understood almost nothing and his English language pronunciation was very Thaiized, brilliant mimicry. I asked why he chose to not be an excellent example for his classmates. His answer was a cultural lesson for me. Thailand is a peer-oriented society, it's very important to fit into one's peer group. If he showed his excellence in English, his brothers would lose face and brand him a show-off and a person who thought he was too good for his peers. He would have been ostracized. Yes. April was a brilliant student of mine. She worked hard, excelled in all her classes, and is now a pharmacist. One day in class when I was returning test papers, I bragged on an answer of April's that I thought was particularly insightful. After class, April came up to me and said, "Mr. Smith, I appreciate the compliment, but please do not brag on me in front of the class again. My friends will ostracize me. They will claim that I am acting white." I was dumbfounded. Even in my small, rural school, I had no idea that excelling academically was acting white. I have had many students of color who were star students, valedictorians, salutatorians, etc., and never once did any of these students express any anxiety about doing well, nor did they mention any flack they received from their friends. I did not question April about her comment, and I assured her I would not put her on the spot again. I did, however, emphasize to her that succeeding in school and life was not sole proprietorship of any race. I further opined that letting friends define her was not a healthy habit to get into. Peer pressure is indeed a powerful phenomenon.
Please leave your story in the comments, I would love to make a video on them in the future also. Don't forget to like and subscribe to you never miss a video.